Okay, we're live. So a little bit of health update. I've started going to the gym. I got I got cold the first day I went because of the ACs. पता नहीं उन्होंने ventilation system में कुछ problem करी है और it's mold or something. It's the same as I went to Thapar University. उनके hostels में भी same issue. It might be like lead in the paint or whatever. Plus, I'm a sensitive individual when it comes to um, fragrances or any kind of air pollutants because sinuses ऊपर से. So yeah, that's a problem. Then other than that, I got my feet fucked up, so I've got band-aid on right now. It's not too bad, but it's enough to make me uncomfortable. Okay, we'll continue where we left off the last stream. हम एक तो ये चीज़. Oh no, not this. This is the YouTube video planner template, not this. This, yep. Bare minimum, the video idea I was talking about. I've got a couple of good points when it comes to scripting and writing. Hopefully, we'll create the scriptage or even record the video. Abhi, right? Okay, let's get to it then. Thankfully, my voice abhi better हो गई है. अभी around like in the day, it was so bad. It's better now comparatively at least. Anyways, so where did we leave off? Definitions: breadcrumbing, good enough hair. Yes. Fear of being alone. We were at wise कि ये चीज़ें होती क्यों हैं. Alright. Fear of being single. One of the most. ये हमने कर लिया था. One of the most consistent findings. And was I making? I was making notes. No, what's up? I was making notes in the diary. Yep, there it is. Yep, okay. One of the most consistently supported findings in psychology. Should I change the position of the camera because most of the time मेरा सिर नीचे रहता था. You can see basically nothing. Where can I put it? I can put it here, but that would be kind of weird. Let me see. Can you put it here? You could put it here. How about that? Yeah. So when I'm writing, seems about right. Yep, this should work. Okay. Fear of being single. I don't need this, yeah? That better? Damn, my hair looks nice. Okay, anyways. So, fear of being single. One of the most consistently supported findings in relationship psychology is that fear of being single is a significant predictor of settling for less. Spielman, in a landmark multi-study paper published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, found that fear of being single, distinct from though related to anxious attachment, reliably predicted remaining in unsatisfying relationship, expressed romantic interest in less desirable targets, and a lower likelihood of ending a relationship that were not meeting one's needs. But that in itself is a self-esteem issue of thinking that you cannot find someone better. Okay. Then loneliness itself has well documented consequences. Research published in the Journal of Personal Research Relationships confirms that loneliness is correlated with a reduced relationship commitment, trust, and conflict management capacity. Kakiapo, bro, what the fuck is that name? Kakiapo and Hockley 2010 demonstrated that chronic illness activates the same neural pain pathways as physical pain, which helps explain why the prospect of solitude can override relationship evaluation of a partner's adequacy. Fair enough. Okay, normalize low standards from early environment. This is very important. A consistent theme across clinical accounts is that many individuals who accept bare minimum treatment grew up in environments where incomplete, conditional, or emotionally absent love was the norm. All right. Grew up in environments where incomplete, conditional, or emotionally absent love was the norm. Okay. When a caregiver's love was expressed through silence, distance, or inconsistency, the child does not conclude that love is absent. They conclude that this is what love looks like. I see. Okay. As the Median article by Maria Arshad articulates, the child learns something that love means being distant, love means silence, love feels like it has conditions. And this becomes the blueprint for how we see relationships later in life. Okay. This is consistent with Bowlby's concept of the internal working model, the cognitive emotional schema of relationships, self and others that forms in response to early caregiving experiences and shapes all subsequent relational expectations. An individual whose internal working model encodes love as effortful, scarce, and conditional will not only accept bare minimum treatment, they may generally fail to recognize that it is inadequate, or so they don't even know if it's a problem. Okay, Paul B's cognitive emotional schema. Individual individual's emotional and cognitive framework is rooted in the internal working model IWM. This model consists of cognitive schemas, mental representations of the self, other, and the world. सेल्फ मॉडल ऑफ अदर्स ये तो देखा था मैंने is this yep here Bowlby's attachment theory. Remember all of this. Safe haven, Bowlby's monotropic theory. Internal working model. Attachment relationship with the primary caregiver leads to the development of an internal working model cognitive framework comprising mental representation for understanding the world, self, and others. The social and emotional responses to the primary caregiver provide the infant with information about the world and other people, and also how they view themselves as individuals. For example, the extent to which an individual perceives himself or herself as worthy of love and care, the information regarding the variability and reliability of others. Okay, Bowlby referred to this knowledge as an internal working model IWM, which begins as a mental and emotional representation of the infant's first attachment relationship and forms the basis of an individual's attachment style. A person's interaction with others is guided by memories and expectations from their internal model, which influence and help evaluate their contact with others. I see. Unloved, rejected, avoidant, angry, confused, resistant, positive, loved equals secure. Working model of itself. Working models also comprise cognition of how to behave and regulate affects when a person's attachment behavioral system is activated, and notions regarding the availability of attachment figures when called upon. Bowlby suggested that the first 5 years of life were crucial to developing the IWM. There are three main features of the internal working model: a model of others as being trustworthy, a model of self as valuable, and a model of self as effective when interacting with others. Oh, this is the Nathaniel Brandon Waller model of self-esteem. Take it. Understood. Consistent with Bowlby's concept of inner working model, the cognitive emotional schema of relationships, self and others that form in response to early caregiving experiences and shapes all subsequent relational expectation. An individual whose internal working model encodes love as effortful scars. Working model. I generally fail to recognize that it is inadequate. Nice. Sunk cost fallacy. You know all about that, mate. Sunk cost fallacy. Because I'm also an active debater, sunk cost fallacy is basically where you are at a point where you've invested too much and failing would inflict greater emotional damage than practical. So the fallacy is that you continue going down a failing road. This is why investors, when they invest and start failing, or their stocks, their investments start going down, they invest even more. People whose relationship are already failing, they do not bail out, they invest, they put in more effort. Plus, this also means that after a specific point, you don't want to view all of your time and effort spent in a relationship as useless. So that is why you feel like you इतना time लगा दिया, इतना effort लगाया, अब relationship क्यों खत्म करनी, let's just work on it. That kind of ignores the actual problem at hand. Ki most relationship problems aren't even relationship problems, they're personal problems. And when you're in a situation जहाँ पे problem persist कर रही है या फिर problem amplify कर रही है, in that situation you cannot stay and fix the problem. You have to get out of the situation and then fix the problem. It's very similar to how, imagine there is a epidemic or there's a plague. I cannot stay in the village that is plagued to fight or cure my own plague, right? You have to get out of the situation first. All right. The sunk cost fallacy, the tendency to continue investing in something because of prior investment, regardless of its current or future value, applies powerfully to relationships. The tendency to continue investing in something because of prior investment, regardless of its current or future value, applies powerfully to relationships. The longer someone has been with a partner, the more emotionally costly it feels to leave when objective evidence suggests the relationship is not meeting their needs. Sunk cost fallacy and relational history. I really want to know if it's like one way or, because like it's easier for me to understand why the person who is being treated with bare minimum behavior stays in the relationship. But why does the person? It's kind of explainable, but I want to see the psychological basis of it. Okay. Uh, uh, uh. Longer relationship equals it feels costly to leave. Even when objective evidence is available. This is one of the reasons why people who get cheated on still stay in the relationship, because they've been in a relationship for so long with that person, which is completely beyond me. Coffee अच्छी नहीं बनी यार. The fuck? What the fuck is wrong with this? It's rotten. Allow history to keep you confined to the relationship. This pattern is reinforced by cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort of acknowledging that time and emotional investment have been spent on someone who has never truly committed. Okay. So, cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is what we call incongruence in self-esteem language. The psychological discomfort acknowledging the time and psychological discomfort. One of the reason people don't do it is because at the end of it they have to be responsible for the consequences that follow. even if those consequences are good, there is no actual way of knowing if they're good. That is why people wait for something um, absolute or something inignorable to happen. That is when it is no longer a personal choice but an obvious one. Ki I didn't leave, or the internal dialogue is that I had no option but to leave. But I tried saving the relationship, I tried making it better, I tried fixing things. All of that. Okay. 3.4. Over functioning as a relational pattern. Interesting. Over functioning as a relational pattern. A common response to a bare minimum partner is compensatory overfunctioning, picking up the emotional slack, doing the work of two people, and interpreting one's own exhaustion as evidence of love rather than a symptom of imbalance. Defines this as leading to burnout and resentment, noting that overreaction to small triggers are frequently downstream consequences of accumulated relational fatigue. Overreactions to small triggers. Systemic family therapy literature recognizes overfunctioning, underfunctioning, or as an interlocking relational dynamic where one partner's excessive effort enables and maintains the other's withdrawal. Fair. Over investment and imbalance equals evidence of love. Exhaustion leads to overreactions and crash outs. Over functioning enables maintains others' withdrawal. Okay, the role of self-esteem. All right, back at it. Because मैंने इसको bottle पे लगाया हुआ है. I have to do this. All right, back to it. कैसा था ये? Do it like this. Do it like this. Yep, that makes sense. Alrighty. The role of self-esteem. My favorite one. 4. The role of self-esteem. 4.1. Among all individual level variables, self esteem is one of the most thoroughly researched predictors of relationship quality and relational decision making. The relationship between self esteem and romantic outcomes is bidirectional, well replicated, and clinically significant. Low self esteem and relationship perception. Errol and North, in a review published in the European Psychologist, synthesized evidence showing that individuals with low self-esteem tend to perceive their partners more negatively, underestimate their partner's love and commitment, and and critically are more likely to accept poor treatment because they believe it is what they deserve or what is available to them. Murray demonstrated experimentally that low self-esteem individuals when led to believe their partner had concerns about the relationship, exhibit elevated anxiety, reduced perceived closeness, and greater withdrawal, a pattern that further destabilizes relationships. I see. Low self esteem and relational perception is a review. Low self esteem and relationship perception. Individuals with low self esteem tend to view their partner negatively underestimate their partner's love and commitment, and are more likely to accept poor treatment because they believe that it is what they deserve, what is available to them. All right. Then longitudinal evidence. What does longitudinal evidence mean? A comprehensive longitudinal study tracked 885 couples over 5 years and 6,116 couples over 15 years. The research found that each partner's initial self esteem predicted the couple's shared initial level of relationship satisfaction. Critically, that changes in self esteem over time drove parallel changes in relationship satisfaction. These effects were consistent across gender and held when controlling for age, health, and relationship length. This body of evidence suggests that raising self esteem is not merely a personal wellness goal, but a relationship elevation intervention. The fuck? Longitudinal evidence. Improvement in self esteem equals more satisfactory relationship. This is what we discussed a minute ago, that most relationship problems aren't relationship problems but personal problems. And when you deal with the personal problems, relationship problems go away, because guess what? Relationship problem वो कभी थी ही नहीं. That is the cognitive dissonance का sort of paradox, that accepting your own problems is harder than being in the delusion that the problem exists in the relationship. Because once you accept your personal problems, it becomes obvious for you to work on them. But it is even harder to then not work on them, because that leads to dissatisfaction when you can do something about the situation but you're not doing it. So the easier option always is to presume that you can not do anything about the relationship, and even if you can do it, you are doing it. But like, you're trying to solve the wrong problem. You're trying to solve a problem that doesn't even exist. Okay. The self-fulfilling dimension, of course. Low self-esteem can create relational self-fulfilling prophecies, because individuals with low self-esteem believe they are less worthy of love. They may behave in ways through excessive accommodation, suppression of needs, or avoidance of assertive communication that signal low status to partners and inevitably confirm the bare minimum. Partners believes that their effort is sufficient. Dynamic high self-esteem. Psychology today summarizes this dynamic. High self-esteem individuals are more assertive in recognizing and seeking satisfaction of their core values, desires, and needs, while low self-esteem individuals often remain silent, suffering a cycle of their own making. The self-fulfilling dimension. Low self-esteem creates self-fulfilling prophecies. Believe equals subconscious behavior. This is well known, and that signal low self-esteem, suppression need, excessive accommodation, avoidance of assertive communication. Excessive, my back hurts. Excessive accommodation, suppression of needs, and avoidance of assertive communication. This is so fucking similar to parenting, what we do, what most people do with their parents, what they have to do with their parents. This is a dynamic health self-esteem. Individuals are more assertive in recognizing and seeking satisfaction of their core values, desires, and needs, while low self-esteem individuals often remain silent and suffering in a cycle of their own making. Fair enough. Partner's self-esteem at the start of a relationship predicted both of their own and their partner's relationship satisfaction. Wow. Attachment theory and childhood blueprint. Of course. ये तो आना ही आना था. This is very predictable. I read the book called Attached. Didn't really like it. It was very self-contradicting. Better refer to the principal material. Always remember that. Attachment theory originally formulated by John Bowlby and empirically elaborated by Mary Ainsworth. Mary Ainsworth is the author of the book Attached. I didn't really like her book. Provides the most comprehensive and empirically supported framework for understanding why early relational experiences shape adult romantic expectations and choices. What does infallible mean? It's infallible, something that never making mistake or being wrong. Okay. Indebatable. Undebatable. Not subjected to debate. Undebatable is different. Something that cannot be proven wrong. Not that it. I thought it was infallible, but it's not infallible. Fallible means. What does fallible mean? Fallible means able or likely to make mistakes. Nah, this is different then. I'll have to look up this word. Something which cannot be. It's the idea that if something just merely because something cannot be proven wrong does not make it right. I need to look up the word. Alrighty. Could do a 4K stream, you know. Do I have to end it? Don't get distracted. Okay. The 4 attachment styles. 5.1. The 4 attachment styles. Ainsworth's strange situation procedure identified 3 initial infant attachment patterns: secure, anxious, ambivalent, and avoidant, later expanded by Mains and Solomon to include disorganized attachment research, extending these patterns to adult romantic relationship. Hazan and Shawar, Farley and Shawar. Secure attachment approximately 55 to 60% of the population. Individuals comfortable with intimacy and interdependence more likely to have satisfying, trusting, and stable relationships. I don't trust this number. What the fuck? 55 to 60% people are securely attached. What percent of the population is securely attached? 50 to 60%. Attachment distribution can vary significantly depending on demography, testing methods, specific environment, comfortable with intimacy, emotionally stable. I do not fucking agree with this. Let's check on Reddit. It also seems that they may base some people's assessment on themselves. I agree with the numbers. I think you can look up the amount of 30s. 30 somethings who are married with kids, the amount of people who get into relationship in early 20s and just go in long distance relationships, maybe have one big breakup or two, mostly are in relationship longer than a year. I think these numbers have changed drastically in recent times. The Bogota says 50%, but apparently the based on self-reporting is obviously going to be a big margin of error. Yes, thank you for saying that. I feel like it might be safe to assume a lot of stats we can find online probably biased. Numbers sound reasonable to me. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a fair amount of observer bias here. Like, I suspect you're going to observe far fewer securely attached people during relationship online dating than you would be relation as a whole. I I don't think so. Given how the parenting has been of a recent, or I might have the Indian bias that I've only observed the Indian demography. Maybe. All right. Secure attachment, approximately 50 to 60% of the population individuals secure with intimacy and interdependence, more likely to have satisfying, trusting, stable relationships. Anxious attachment, characterized by hypervigilance about partner availability, fear of abandonment, and a tendency to tolerate mistreatment to avoid perceived rejection. Directly linked to remaining in low quality relationships. Avoidant relationship characterized by discomfort with emotional closeness, suppression of attachment needs, and relational withdrawal. The attachment profile most consistent with giving the bare minimum. Most consistent with giving the bare minimum. Hmm. Disorganized attachment associated with inconsistent early caregiving. Early caregiving often involves both desire for and fear of closeness. Okay, these are well known. Bastal, secure, anxious, avoidant, disorganized. Internal working model and relational expectations. Bowlby proposed that early caregiving interactions create internal working models, mental representations of self and others that acts as templates for future relationships. Bowlby proposed that early caregiving interactions create internal working model, mental representation of self and others that act as template for future relationships. Individuals whose caregivers were inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or conditional in their affection develop working models that encode love as effortful, uncertain, or conditional, predisposing them to accept relational environments that mirror this early experience. Farley and colleagues' research confirmed that attachment security is associated with greater relationship longevity, trust, commitment, and interdependence. Critically, research by Errol and North links insecure attachment style to lower emotional intelligence and lower trait mindfulness. Two capacities essential for identifying and responding to bare minimum patterns in life. Insecure attachment styles to lower emotional intelligence and lower trait mindfulness. Hmm. So insecure attachment means lower emotional intelligence as well. Ability to recognize and deal with bare minimum partners is missing. Okay. 5.2 internal working models. Individuals who carry inconsistent emotional available conditional imperfection developing in code love is ये तो हो गया था predisposition to accept early experience. इसका वो होएगा familiarity over satisfaction नहीं, familiarity over emotional stability, satisfaction है, relationship satisfaction to your healthy. They prefer familiarity over a healthy relationship because they have been in this environment since childhood. They perceive this environment as familiar and safe. So they lack the ability to see the problem. So they'll see problem everywhere else but in their partner and the relationship. Fair. Or themselves for that matter. Research confirms that attachment security is associated with greater relationship longevity. We know this. Insecure attachment starts to lower. Okay. Ability to recognize and deal with bare minimum partners is missing in individuals with insecure attachment. Okay. Can attachment patterns change? Of course they can. Thankfully, it's a cognitive behavioral model, right? So, as long as it is cognitively linked, cognitively created, administered, can be changed because it's a conscious model of how we perceive things. Like every other kind of behavior, this is also a behavior and can be reprogrammed. Critically, contemporary attachment research confirms that attachment styles are not fixed. Not fixed in the sense, not be all, be all, nahi. Not fixed in the sense that they're not rigid, they can be changed. Research summarized by the conversation demonstrated that attachment patterns can and do change over time, and that romantic relationships themselves can serve as healing relationships that update an individual's internal working model. This has direct therapeutic implications, secure functioning at partnerships, as well as attachment informed therapy can gradually revise the relationship blueprint that lead to people to tolerate bare minimum treatment, of course. Yes. Through therapy and okay. Intermittent reinforcement and breadcrumbing. Of course, Skinner has entered the picture. Intermittent reinforcement and Skinner was the one who said that give me a child and I'll give you a king, an emperor, or a killer and a thief. That's such a badass quote. Let me find that. Wait. BF. बहुत sexy quote है इसका. killer and a thief. Yes, this one. Oh, that's Watson. Yeah, this good. Bro, this is so good. Yep. This, give me a dozen healthy infants, well informed, and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to make anyone at random and train him. Take anyone at random and train him to become any type of specialist. I might select doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant, chief, or yes, even beggar, man, and thief, regardless of his talents, pensions, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race of his ancestors. This is badass at the time. Anyways, back to it. Okay. Intermittent reinforcement and breadcrumbing. One of the most powerful and least recognized mechanism maintaining bare minimum relationship is intermittent reinforcement, a concept derived from B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning research that explains why unpredictable rewards generate stronger and more persistent behavioral response than consistent rewards. Behavioral mechanisms. The behavioral mechanics. Skinner's research demonstrated that behaviors reinforced on a variable ratio schedule where reinforcement arrives unpredictably are the most resistant to extinction. This is the same schedule used by slot machines, and its power lies in the fact that each non-reward does not extinguish hope. It merely sustains it because the next interaction might be the one that delivers. In the context of bare minimum relationship, this means that occasional warmth, affection, or attention interspersed between long periods of emotional absence or neglect creates a neurological pattern that is powerfully difficult to break. Fair. Intermittent reinforcement and breadcrumbing. What? Bruh. What the hell? 6.1. The behavioral mechanics. मैंने दोबारा सेम ही हेडिंग लिख दी. Skinner research demonstrated that behavioral reinforcement on a variable ratio. This means that occasional warmth, operant conditioning, unpredictable rewards equals to higher hope. This means occasional warmth, affection, and attention dispersed between long periods of absence or neglect create a logical pattern that is okay. Sorry. create a neurological dependence similar to addiction. We had this before as well, yeah. Okay. Neurochemical underpinning. Neurobiologically, each breadcrumb and unexpected text or movement of tenderness, a returned call, triggers a release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward anticipation, because dopamine is released in anticipation of a reward rather than upon its delivery. The uncertainty of whether the next interaction will be a warm or cold keeps the system in a state of chronic reward seeking. Dr. Angel and the Cleveland Clinic both note that this process creates what is effectively a relational addiction. The recipient is chemically conditioned to pursue the intermittent reward even at significant emotional cost. Neurological underpinning. Neurochemical. Alrighty. Neurochemical underpinning is anticipation of reward equals dopamine release. Anticipation keeps in a state of chronic reward seeking. There was a video I saw recently, Ludhiana mein. There was this guy who was arguing with his mother because he needed drug money. The mother, after like 3 or 4 dialogues, it's kind of rude to call them dialogues, but very objectively with no shame or pride. After 4 or 6 dialogues, she screamed at him and threw the money on the ground. And the guy very conveniently picked up the money and left to get more drugs. That is the kind of addiction I feel bare minimum relationships can induce. With the neurological underpinning is basically the same. Okay. Breadcrumbing as a modern relationship pattern. Tochkov. In a conceptual analysis published in the Advances in Social Sciences Research Journal, defines breadcrumbing as sporadic, non-committal attention maintained without genuine intention of deepening the relationship. Ooh, that's a nice definition. Related peer-reviewed research finds that exposure to breadcrumbing is associated with anxiety and emotional insecurity. Related peer-reviewed research finds that exposure to breadcrumbing associated with anxiety and emotional insecurity, low self-esteem is associated with. But like उसकी वजह से होती है what? Anxiety and emotional insecurity, low self-esteem, and diminished life satisfaction. The behavior thrives particularly in digital environment, online dating, texting, social media, where low effort signals of attention, likes, views, brief messages are easily delivered without relational accountability. Intermittent reinforcement are not exclusive to overtly obsessive relationships. It operates equally in relationships characterized by simple apathy, where a partner's inconsistent effort is not strategic manipulation but the natural consequence of low investment. हाँ मतलब it's not by default intentionally harmful. In either case, the receiving partner's nervous system responds in the same way. Exactly. Okay. So ये जो ऊपर वाला है, it is basically saying that relationships that depend on social media or are interesting. I'm still gonna write it. I'm quite skeptical about it because then this has the undertone of applying almost all long distance relationships. Coming as a modern, or is this the genesis? It can't be the genesis. I have seen relationships which, but then they were quite accepted in that sense. Relationships that's like older, maybe like people who are in their 50s or 60s. Their relationships, they have breadcrumbing um, patterns as well. I think it just amplifies it, right? Sporadic, non-committal, attention maintained without genuine intention of deepening the relationship. This is exactly a situationship. Of I can see how social media would increase or amplify relational insecurities and problems. Gottman's research, the relational cost of underinvestment. Okay. I think this is as far as I read the last time. इसके बाद का सारा कुछ नवा ही है. It's a lot of pages left. What the fuck? Bro, I'm on 11 and it has about 20 pages. 19. Dr. John Gottman, 4-decade-long program of research conducted in the University of Washington's Love Lab. Love Lab? That sounds nice. Provides the most robust empirical framework for understanding how relational underinvestment translates into measurable deterioration and dissolution. The four horsemen of relationship dissolution. Oh, this was the वो वाला जो हमने पहले देखा था, right? Gottman and Levinson identified four communication patterns which Gottman called the four horsemen that are strong predictors of relational dissatisfaction and divorce when left unaddressed. Criticism: attacking a partner's character rather than addressing a specific behavior. Attacking a partner's character rather than addressing a specific behavior. Okay. Contempt: disrespect expressed through sarcasm, irony, mockery, or belittling. Identified as the single most predictive behavior of divorce, increasing its likelihood by up to 93% in some analysis. Wow. This is what we call nagging, right? Defensiveness: shifting blame back to the complaining partner, refusing accountability. Stonewalling: emotional or physical withdrawal, silence, and refusal to engage during conflict. Multiple behaviors associated with bare minimum relationship map directly onto this framework. Multiple behavior associated with the bare minimum relationship map directly onto this framework. The dismissive response: you're overreacting, the emotional shutdown during conflict, and the refusal to take relational initiative all overlap with what Gottman identifies as stonewalling and contempt. Multiple behaviors associated with bare minimum relationships map directly onto this framework: the dismissive response, you're overreacting, the emotional shutdown during conflict, and the refusal to take relational initiative. Ugh. Better. Relationship may directly onto this framework. This response, you reacting, the emotional shutdown during conflict, and the refusal to take relational initiative. But love with Gottman's identifies strong willing contempt. Fair enough. The emotional bank account. This is nice. Gottman's metaphor of the emotional bank account is particularly useful for understanding bare minimum dynamics. In this model, every positive interaction, a kind gesture, an expression of appreciation, a moment of genuine connection, makes a deposit, while every negative interaction or relational failure makes a withdrawal. Healthy relationships maintain a high positive for stable relationships. The Losada ratio, Frederickson Losada, a bare minimum partner by definition makes few deposits and frequent withdrawals, leaving the account chronically overdrawn. That's a nice metaphor. Metaphor or analogy. A PMC published study on couples with BPD extending Gottman's framework demonstrated that the emotional bank account balance at the start of a relationship predicted both partner satisfaction and whether that satisfaction deteriorated over a 12-month follow up. Evidence that the cumulative effect of small daily behaviors, not dramatic crisis, determines long term relation trajectory. Cumulative effect of small daily behavior, not dramatic crisis. I see. Quality time as a minimum baseline. Gottman's applied research recommends a minimum of 5 hours of quality time per week, approximately 45 minutes per day, as a maintenance threshold for relational well-being. This is not a high bar; it represents the absolute floor of intentional relational engagement. Bare minimum partners frequently fall below even this threshold, with the Candle blog reporting that recipients of bare minimum treatment frequently describe not receiving even 10 minutes of undivided attention from their partner. Undivided quality time. ये वो वाली कैटेगरी है कि जब बात होती है लड़ाई हो जाती है. Okay. I'll be back. Alrighty. I do need a beard trim. हेयर कट सोच रहा हूँ मगर मन सा नहीं कर रहा देख के सेक्सी लग रहा. Yes. For horsemen of a relationship dissolution. We had a party urge. I didn't go because of my foot and the fucking cold. Plus, I had multiple meetings in the day. That was a problem. The four horsemen that are strong predictors of relational satisfaction and divorce when left unaddressed. Okay. Criticism of character, then behavior. Contempt. Expressed through sarcasm, eye rolling, mockery, or belittling. ये तो बहुत ज़्यादा कॉमन है. 3. Defensiveness, shifting blame. Accountability. Stonewalling. Emotional or physical withdrawal. Silence and refusal to engage during conflict. Okay. Emotional bank account. This is a good one. Kind gesture, appreciation and compliment equals deposit, negative action equals withdrawal. Healthy ratio 5:1. Going bankrupt. Okay. Daily accumulated behavior is more important than dramatic crises are क्राइसिस को उल्टा क्या होगा? Okay. Quality time as a baseline. $45 minutes of quality time daily is the baseline. Not ideal. The absolute low bar. Lower than 10 minutes. Okay. Consequences of settling. What are the consequences of settling? यार मेरे को नए पेपर निकालने पड़ेंगे, बहुत ज़्यादा ही हो गए हैं, for now at least, because ये fold नहीं हो रहे, नहीं तो I have more thingies here. This aside for now. Oh fuck, it's 4:30 यार, damn बहुत जल्दी टाइम निकला यार. Oh, Sonu Wangchuk is coming to the protest at Jantar Mantar, organized by the Conqueror Janata Party. Let's see how it goes. I am pretty sure Dipke को एयरपोर्ट पे ही अरेस्ट कर लिया जाएगा. That will be the end of it. People will still protest, but I don't believe him to be a crackhead enough to go through all of that. He's going to take the easy way out. At least that's my opinion. Or my perception of him with the information I have. Anyways, back to it. Oh, if you do want to see my notes, my writing is fucking crazy. Okay. What are the consequences of settling? The consequences of remaining in a bare minimum relationship and neither trivial nor transient. Clinical and research evidence document predicts impacts across psychological, physiological, and social dimensions. Psychological consequences. Therapist Davis summarizes the cumulative psychological toll. Feelings of invisibility, unworthiness, emotional starvation, erosion of self esteem, self blame, and chronic loneliness. These are not merely emotional discomfort, they are clinically significant states. Roberts, in a study examining attachment insecurity and self concept, found that attachment related negative self belief activate negative cognitive frameworks associated with depression, anxiety, and psychological distress. A finding replicated in the Science Direct study demonstrating that insecure secondary attachment, including romantic attachment, predicts physiological and psychological distress mediated by self esteem. The phenomena of overfunctioning, compensating for a partner's underinvestment through excessive emotional labor, leads to burnout. Davis observes that individuals in this dynamic frequently notice disproportionate reaction to minor triggers as a sign of accumulated resentment they have not consciously acknowledged. Erosion of relational identity and standards, extended exposure to bare minimum treatment creates what psychologists call normalization, the cognitive recalibration of what is acceptable. When someone has, this is why I tell people that, oh, if even if you are in, even if you are in situationships for fun, at the end of it, it's gonna leave an impact. The fuck. At the end of it, it's gonna leave an impact that inevitably is gonna create more problems in the future for you. Bro, what the hell? ये पूरा नहीं आ रहा क्या? It should be fine. Yeah, that inevitably is gonna create more problems for you in the future because that is how you start viewing relationships. That is what becomes the new normal for you. One of the reasons I don't deal with people who are into casual relationships. Like, nothing morally wrong with it. It's just I do not see the purpose or reasoning behind it. When someone has spent months or years receiving minimal effort, their comparison point shifts. They stop asking, does this relationship meet my ends, and begin asking, is this partner at least not hurting me? This gradual erosion of standard is one of the most pernicious long term effect because it persists even after the relationship ends, influencing subsequent partner selection. Fair enough. Physiological consequences of chronic loneliness. Paradoxically, individuals in bare minimum relationships frequently experience the physiological effects of loneliness despite being partnered. Research confirms that loneliness is correlated with decreased relationship commitment, trust, and conflict capacity, but also that it carries systemic health risk. Kakyapo, Kakyopa, Ka- Kakyopo, Kakyopo, Kakyopo and Hockley demonstrated that chronic loneliness is associated with elevated cardiovascular activation and is a robust predictor of psychopathology, including depression and anxiety. A person who is technically in a relationship but emotionally unsupported is not protected by these effects. Opportunity cost, the love you forego. Ooh, this is my favorite. Burford identifies perhaps the most philosophically significant consequence of settling the forfeiture of the emotional space in which a genuinely reciprocal relationship might grow. Every year spent in a bare minimum relationship is a year in which growth, genuine intimacy, and mutual flourishing were foreclosed. Sonnenberg frames this in terms of habituated mediocrity, the capacity for excellence, whether in relationships or any domain, atrophies under sustained conditions of low expectation. What? Sonnenberg frames this in terms of habituated mediocrity. The capacity for excellence, whether in relationships or any domain, atrophies under sustained condition of low expectation. The longer one tolerates the bare minimum, the harder it becomes recognizable even more. I see. Okay. My shoulder hurts because आज not even shoulder. कल मैंने shoulder करा था, आज I did shoulder and chest. So doesn't even hurt, it's just strained. Mesomorph, so I contain a lot of, or I sustain a lot of muscle very easily. Anyways, back to it. Psychological consequences. Water. We need water. Okay. This is technically 4K and the quality is okay, immaculate. Okay. Therapist Davis summarized the cumulative psychological toll, feelings of invisibility and worthiness, emotional starvation, erosion of self esteem, self blame, and chronic loneliness. Feelings of invisibility unworthiness, emotional starvation, erosion of self esteem, self blame, and chronic loneliness. They're not merely emotional discomforts, they are clinically significant states. Roberts in a study examining attachment insecurity and self concept, found that attachment related negative self beliefs activate negative cognitive frameworks associated with depression. Emotionally insecure secondary attachment predicts psychological distress mitigated by self-esteem, the phenomena of over-functioning, compensating for a partner's underinvestment through excessive emotional labor. The phenomena of over-functioning, compensating for a partner's underinvestment through excessive emotional labor leads to burnout. Davis observes that individuals in a dynamic frequently notice disproportionate reaction to minor triggers. He saw the whole year. This is quite repetitive. Relational identity and standards. Extended exposure to bare minimum treatment creates what psychologists call normalization. Yes. Leads to normalization, cognitive recalibration of what is acceptable. When someone has spent months or years receiving minimal effort, their comparison point shifts from mm, they sh- shifts. They stop asking, "What does this relationship meet my needs?" and begin asking, "Is this partner at least not hurting me?" This gradual erosion of standards is one of the most pernicious long-term effect because it persists even after a relationship ends. Has effects beyond current relationship. Physiological consequences of chronic loneliness. इसमें था क्या कुछ? Oh, this was that even when people are in relationship, their body shows signals of loneliness. Confirms that loneliness is correlated with decreased relationship commitment, trust, and conflict capacity, but also it carries systemic health risks. Stated that chronic loneliness is associated with elevated cardiovascular activation is a robust predictor of psychopathology, including depression and anxiety. A person who is technically in a relationship but emotionally unsupported, technically in a relationship but emotionally unsupported is not protected from these effects. Shows the same physiological signs as someone who is lonely, signaling okay. Opportunity cost, the love we forego. bro. This is one of my favorite topics. The love you forgo. I इसका ना लिख लेता हूँ मैं. I want to write about this, like a piece or a poetry or something. The forfeiture of the emotional space in which a genuinely reciprocal relationship might grow. Opportunity cost. Is this an actual term? The value of the next best alternative foregone when making a choice. One option means you cannot enjoy the benefits of another. True cost of a decision, including both financial and non-monetary trade-offs. I see. So it's a economics based on. Okay. The forfeiture. Of the emotional space in which genuinely reciprocal relationship might grow. A year which grow genuine intimacy in multiple and mutual flourishing were foreclosed. Frames this as the terms of habitual mediocrity. The capacity for excellence, whether in relationship or any domain, atrophies under sustained condition of low expectation. The longer one tolerates the bare minimum, the harder it becomes to recognize or believe in more. This is the I don't know whose quote this is. मैंने कभी ये status पे डाला था. The longer you stay on the wrong train, the more costly it is to get back home. Okay. Ninth. Relationship standards, what the baseline should look like. That's the baseline, by the way, not qualities of a good relationship. What the baseline should look like. Establishing what a healthy relational baseline looks like is essential, not to prescribe perfection, but to provide an evidence grounded reference point against which current experience can be assessed. The following standards are drawn from relationship science, clinical best practice, and the work of leading researchers including Gottman, Rice, Shaver, and Davis. Relational baseline looks like is essential, not to prescribe perfection, but provide an evidence grounded reference point against which current experience can be assessed. Mutual respect, valuing each other's feelings, boundaries, and individuality consistently, including during conflict. No belittling, dismissal, or contempt. Honest communication, transparency about important matters, open dialogue about feelings, consistent follow through on commitments, bidirectional effort. Both parties initiate contact, plan activities, and express care. Effort is visible and not wholly conditional on one partner's escalation. Emotional presence. Genuine curiosity about a partner's inner life, offering support when distress is expressed, not dismissal. Emotional disclosure. Emotional presence. Genuine curiosity about a partner's inner life, offering support when distress is expressed, not dismissing. Emotional disclosure. Quality time. Gottman recommends a minimum of 5 hours per week of intentional, focused, shared time for relationship maintenance. Willingness to address disagreements, take responsibility, and repair after conflict. Minimizing the relational clarity. Both partners aligned on the nature, direction, and expectation of the relationship. No indefinite ambiguity about commitment. Fair. Freedom from harm. The relationship is free from physical, emotional, or psychological abuse, manipulation, or chronic contempt. These are not aspirational ideals or demands for perfection. They represent the relational ground floor, the conditions required for both partners to feel safe, valued, and capable of growth. A relationship that cannot sustain these standards is not a relationship in deficit. It is a relationship operating below the minimum conditions of human relational flourishing. Okay. Give me a second, I'll be back. I'm gonna go pee. Someone told me a movie to watch. मैं भूल गया कौन सी बोली थी किसी ने. This is not Goldman, this is Gottman. It's different. Mutual respect. Honest communication. Bidirectional effort. Emotional presence. Quality time. Conflict. Engagement. Relational clarity. Freedom from harm. 8. Okay. Mutual respect, honest communication, bidirectional effort, emotional presence, quality time, conflict engagement, relational clarity, and freedom from harm. Fair enough. Breaking the pattern. Okay. Leaving or transforming a bare minimum relationship requires more than awareness. It requires deliberate cultivation of the psychological resources that bare minimum dynamic systemically erodes. Research identifies several evidence-based pathways. Self-esteem as a therapeutic target, given the bidirectional relationship between self-esteem and relational quality. Improving self-esteem is both a prerequisite for leaving and a consequence of doing so. It's a prerequisite for leaving. In my therapy, it's not. Given the bidirectional relationship between self-esteem and relationship quality, improving self-esteem is both a prerequisite for leaving and a consequence of doing so. Research published in Psych Central and supported by Roll North suggests that self-care behaviors, purpose cultivation, receiving genuine relational support all contribute to self-esteem development. Cognitive behavioral therapy, of course, CBT, targeting negative core beliefs about self-worth, has substantial empirical support for improving both self-esteem and relational decision-making. Attachment informed therapy, because bare minimum acceptance is so frequently rooted in secure attachment and its associated internal working model. Attachment informed therapies, including emotionally focused therapy (EFT) and schema therapy, offer particularly targeted intervention. EFT has a strong evidence base for restructuring insecure attachment bonds, improving emotional accessibility, and building secure, functioning relationships. Okay. Precision Gottman method therapy shows significant improvements in reducing the four horsemen communication patterns and increasing positive relational behavior. Oh, the four horsemen is only for criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Only for communication. Okay. The assessment: can the relationship change? Provides a clear clinical framework for assessing whether a bare minimum relationship is salvageable. A relationship has growth potential if both partners are willing to acknowledge the problem, take accountability, and actively work toward change. It is unlikely to improve if one partner consistently responds with the defensiveness, minimization, or contempt, demonstrates no willingness to alter their patterns. The decision framework reduces to two questions: is growth occurring, and is the effort bilateral? Recognizing and resisting breadcrumbing. Breaking the intermittent reinforcement cycle requires first naming it. Cleveland clinical psychologist Susan Albers recommend recognition, boundary setting, and when the pattern is entrenched, seeking professional support. Identifying the variable reward pattern for what it is, and conditioning mechanism rather than authentic affection reduces its power by engaging the relational cortex against the automatic limbic response. Fair. Practical clarity and non-negotiables. Davis and Burr. Ford both emphasize the importance of clarity about one's clarity but one's own non-negotiables as a protective factor against settling. This involves explicitly defining what one requires in a relationship, observing whether a current or prospective partner consistently meets those standards. One's own non-negotiables is a protective factor against settling. Fair. Defining what one requires in a relationship, observing whether a current or prospective partner consistently meets those standards in practice, not in stated intention, and committing to the principle that the absence of abuse is not by itself a sufficient criteria for relationship continence. As marriage therapist Chipala notes of the Elite Daily, people frequently do not know that a relationship can be genuinely good. Therapy and education can expand this. Do not know that a relationship can be genuinely good. Therapy and education can expand this horizon. Okay, that is it. On page number 17, because the rest is just credits. Oh, by the way, all of these was a document I got compiled from Claude. This is not like available online or whatever. Right. 10th वाले के notes लिखने हैं specifically. As a therapeutic target, cognitive behavioral therapy. Cultivating self-care, behavior, purpose cultivation, and relational support. Attachment informed therapy. इसमें है EFT, emotionally focused therapy. But all of these are kind of okay. Just so we're clear, I do not provide any kind of therapy. Um, Forgot to change the angle. All I do is coaching. The assessment, can the relationship change? Even though it has a lot to do with psychology, I'm not a certified practitioner and I do not claim to be one. The assessment, can the relationship change? There's a clear clinical framework from assessing whether a bare minimum relationship is salvageable. Partners are willing to acknowledge the problems, take accountability, and actively work toward change. Fair. If one partner is unwilling or unable, improvement is unlikely. Okay. 10-4, recognize and resisting breadcrumbing, professional support, boundary setting. Breaking the intermittent reinforcement cycle. The variable reward pattern. Naming the problem. 10.5, practical clarity and non-negotiables. Both emphasize the importance of clarity about one's own non-negotiable as a protective factor against settling. This involves explicitly defining what one requires in a relationship. Clarity and non. One of the things I'm thinking about right now is if I go and create a video on all of this, it's gonna take fucking hours. But if I do not include a certain part of it, it will not be deep enough. It will be too surface level to fluff. I think by insight framework ये insights per minute वाला. कि if I can, it depends on the number of insights I provide per minute. If my script does not have enough insights per minute, that means it's either not valuable enough or too sporadic. Explicitly defining what one requires in a relationship. Observing whether a current or prospective partner consistently meets those standards. Committing to the principle that the absence of abuse is not by itself a sufficient criteria for relationship continuance. That's it. Okay. 510 and done. Right. Now, what I need to do is I'll talk about each of the heading and subheading, record the audio, transcribe it, and then create a script. Add that. Make sense? Let's take a break. It's 5, goddamn. I wish there was an option to pause the stream. Without the advanced results, I did get confirmed data exposure involving nearly 1.8 lakh candidate records and all videos. The bench was flagged by a cybersecurity researcher on X breach. Found that a public cloud storage link to the results portal was like. इधर धुरंधर 3 वाले कमेंट सारी जगह आ जाते हैं. The fuck? ये बना लो. सही में भाई शिवलिंग बनवा लो हैं सब. हॉस्पिटल स्कूल्स बंद करवा रहे हैं. Fuck. Even if I try not to, it gets political every fucking time. So is life. You're nothing if not political. That's a seat head. What the fuck? That's a seat head. Oh god damn, that's cool. That is so cool. So I cannot show it. It's in the back of the camera. I meant that the there. Sheesh, that was good. Yeah, that's better. Bro. Should I go to sleep? Yeah, I probably should. Oh, good sesh. Good sesh. See you in the next stream. Bye bye.